I'd like to open the agenda for a meeting with Finance Investment Committee of the Vallecitos Water District, Monday, June 29th, 2020 at 4 p.m. via teleconference. Notice to the public, due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and Executive Order N3520, so long as state or local public health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via teleconferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical location available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. Public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address: publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments that are received 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of comment will be noted during the meeting. And with that, items for discussion, I'm going to turn it over to General Manager Broom.
Yeah, so we have two items today. We have the audit kickoff, and then we'll have a discussion on the overhead rate, which I believe will ultimately go to the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Wes, and he can kick off our audit discussion.
Good afternoon. So we have a special guest here today. Shannon Ayala, one of our audit partners from Davis & Farr, is with us, and we've invited her to come out and talk to you guys about the interim audit procedures, what the auditors do, and how it affects field work. So she's going to give a short presentation on that today, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask her, because I don't know anything about it. So Shannon, with that, I'll share my screen for you if I can find it.
Great. So thank you, and thank you for having me. This is actually the first meeting I've done on Zoom since COVID-19 has happened, so we'll see how it goes.
Shannon, we're getting some feedback here. Do you have a speaker? I don't know what's causing it.
I do not have a speaker, but I'm hearing the feedback also.
Does anybody have a speaker on? Getting feedback through there?
Maybe everybody should mute their speaker.
Okay, let's everyone mute, except Shannon.
Do you want me to try and talk? Oh, see, it is my phone. Or my computer. I don't know how to fix that.
And it's not muted.
Would that help? Can you hear me?
There's no feedback now. I think we're good.
Okay, so I think when I have my computer speakers on, it gives feedback. So I'm going to talk, but I can't hear you unless I turn my speakers back on. So I'll just go through and then I'll take questions at the end. Okay, Wes, if you want to show my second slide. Today we're going to go over the SAS 114 planning letter, which should have been provided to you, interim field work, which we completed last week, and then final field work. Next slide. So the SAS 114 planning letter is our standard communication letter to the Auditor Finance Committee. We're required to have two-way communication with the committee about fraud and fraud risk. So if you have any concerns, this meeting would be the time to bring them up. It also communicates our timing for the audit and then communicates modifications to our approach. So we did interim field work the communications to the audit approach are on the last page, which will discuss, we have inquired with Wes about the effect of COVID-19 on the district. We will review the OPEB actuary report and census data because this year there will be a new actuary evaluation, so we'll test the underlying census data. And then each year we're required to have an element of unpredictability. So we will review the disbursements per the check register and compare those to the bank statement. So next slide, Wes. So during interim field work, we try to complete a lot of things that can be done before the final trial balance. So we update all of our internal controls. The two gentlemen that were working on the interim this week had phone conversations and I believe video conference calls with staff to update our internal controls. We also do our fraud inquiries, which this meeting is part of our fraud inquiries. And then we also send questionnaires to key finance staff. And we also select a few random employees to send questionnaires to. And then we also do our unpredictability test. And for that test, what we did was we took the check register for all the checks that have been dispersed from the beginning of the fiscal year through, I believe, May 31st. And then we obtained bank statements for each of those months directly from Wes. And then we use our data mining software to combine those two databases and match up checks that have cleared the bank with checks on the check register. And then we follow up on any discrepancies. So for example, there might be discrepancies for checks that were written last year but didn't clear the bank account until this year. And so we would just follow up on those to make sure that they were on the outstanding checklist and any other discrepancies that might come up. We also do some test of transaction testing. So we'll test the disbursements in comparison with the policies and procedures of the district. And I haven't had a chance to review all the work papers, but as far as the unpredictability test goes, at this point, I didn't see any issues. And then our interim fieldwork kind of helps guide our final fieldwork. So for final fieldwork, Wes, if you want to go to the last slide. In addition to our regular audit procedures that we do, which is confirming material, balance sheet accounts, and revenue and expense analyticals, we'll probably focus a little more on receivables and revenues this year as a result of COVID-19. There may be some delinquent accounts, so we'll want to just inquire about those and determine if there's any need for an allowance for uncollectible accounts. Capital asset testing, we always kind of dig into this area because we find that it's a difficult area at a lot of agencies. Just the sheer volume of projects and capital assets. So we like to make sure that things are being capitalized in the correct time period and depreciation is starting. As I mentioned, the OPEB actuary, I think the district is in the process of getting that complete right now. So once the final report's done, we will review the report for any major changes and for reasonableness. And then we're also testing the underlying census data that's provided to the actuary to ensure that the information is correct. And then again, we'll do our revenue and expense analyticals, probably focusing a little more on the revenue side and just ensuring that the changes between the current year and prior year are reasonable given the current pandemic situation. And with that, I can answer any questions that you have. I'm going to unmute my speaker so I can hear questions. Yes,
Director Martin?
Are there any questions? Yes, go ahead, Director Sanella.
Yeah, no questions. I was going to ask a couple questions about how you guys might do things differently this year, given COVID, but you addressed that really nicely, and I think that you're going to cover anything that I had questions for. So I'm looking forward to seeing your kind of your final report to the full board as it pertains, especially to COVID. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Anyone else?
I have no questions.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to leave the meeting if that's okay.
All right, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you,
Okay,
Shannon.
thanks.
All right, Director Martin, I think we're ready to move on to item 2, unless you had any further discussion.
Nope. Item 2 is the overhead rate, FYI 2021.
Yeah, this is something we bring forward. We'll take it forward to the board every year, but we usually stop on the way at the Finance Committee. So that's what we're doing today. So Wes is going to handle this discussion for us today. So Wes, take it away.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find my border. It disappeared. There we go. Okay, I think I got it now. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, great. So
A blank
this,
screen.
what'd you
All I
say?
see is a blank screen. There we go. Okay.
Okay, just took a minute. Okay, so yeah, as General Manager Crow mentioned, this is an item we bring to the board every year. It's done after the budget because it's calculated based on the budget. And this is our overhead rate for fiscal year 2021. So that's a different party page right there. That's our committee party page. How we bring things together. The agenda for today is I'll go over the purpose of the overhead, of calculating overhead and the overhead rate itself. A little bit of background on how we calculate our overhead. Then I'll go over the methodology, talk about the current year's calculation, and then I'll compare it to some prior years. And finally, I'll talk about the next steps. So the overhead is calculated because it's a GAAP requirement. It's provided by GAAP for appropriate cost allocation. And what I mean when I say that is the actual cost of an asset is equal to the direct labor and materials plus supporting costs. And the overhead is actually the supporting costs. So we charge an hour of time to a project. We bring materials out. Those are direct costs, but you also have to run the building, and that's the overhead portion or the supporting costs. So it also eliminates the unfair burden on the ratepayers, and it does this because it allocates a portion of our operating costs to projects. So by doing that, it actually reduces operating costs because we physically on paper, move operating costs to the project. So you'll see a reduction in G&A that's moved to project costs. So the background in calculating our methodology, in 2013, we had a cost of service study done by Black & Veatch. And I know 2013 sounds like it's 7 years ago because it is. But we've reviewed the calculation. It's still GASB industry best practice. It's a straightforward and it's an appropriate calculation for doing overhead. Basically, it's applied to direct labor based on the approved budget, and we set it July 1st each year. So, and what it's used for is to bill contractors for any work we do for outside contractors, developer projects, and for any miscellaneous billings that we have. If say we hit a fire hydrant or whatever, we have to allocate our overhead to that as well when we send out those billings. So the methodology is pretty basic. It's budgeted indirect costs plus employee benefits or direct labor costs. So it looks simple here, and it's not that difficult of a calculation, but to get the direct labor costs, we have to back out the overhead or the benefits that are already included in there, and I'll walk you through that process in just a minute. So here are the indirect costs in the year budget and showing the 2 previous years. So you got fiscal year 20 and 19 shown as well. The top half shows the water departments, and you can see G&As in there. But to note, below G&A, Water General Administration, number 4, which also has the budget page numbers here in the middle, so it references where it is. You can see here on page, it says page 14, but it's number 5, we're actually adding back the G&A transfer. That's the amount of money that's budgeted to be transferred out of operating costs to the projects. But to get the total indirect cost, you have to add it back. So because it's in G&A as a total cost, we back it out. So to calculate our indirect cost, we have to bring it back in. Hopefully that makes sense. Same thing with wastewater. These are the wastewater departments that are considered to be indirect departments: safety, buildings and grounds, information technology. They don't actually charge their labor to projects, so therefore they're indirect. Then you've got the G&A again, and the G&A transfer added back. So the $608,000 shown here, that's the budgeted G&A or operating costs that are budgeted to be transferred out of operations to projects for the year. And that's based on our labor calculation, where people say we charge a certain amount of time to projects, so we actually budget to have that backed out, and here we add it back in. So the next number is water and wastewater benefits. Those are the indirect benefits, obviously, so we have to add them to indirect costs. So when you add all that together, the total district indirect costs of $12.4 million. That number is going to be our numerator, so we need to pay attention to that. That's why I got it circled in big old bold A. So moving on, unless anybody has any questions, we're going to talk about the direct costs now. So here are the direct costs per the fiscal year 2021 budget. And you can see the same thing. The page number is here in the middle column. And it's, again, done by department. So pumping, water quality, water treatment, those are all departments that would charge directly to a project, so they're considered direct costs. Same thing for wastewater. Similar departments: collections, lift station, source control, metal lift station. And then you add all that together and you get the total district direct costs. As I mentioned, benefits are actually included in those costs. If you look at the department, the labor includes the benefits. So to get the actual indirect or direct costs, we have to back out the benefits because they're not a direct cost. So on the next slide, I start with the direct costs, and then per our budget on 25, which is the salaries and benefits page, benefits are 56.4% of labor. So they basically divide that out and you end up with direct costs of $5.9 million. And if you take that 5.9, that's your total direct cost. So that becomes your numerator. So then A was your denominator. A was your numerator at 12.4 million. The 5.9 is your denominator. You do that math and it comes out to be 209.45%. And you can see it also shows the calculation for the the benefits here, which is the difference between that, the 5.9 and the 9.3. So that's the overhead rate for fiscal year 2021. It's actually going down, and I'll show you compared to prior years. It's going down from 217.48% in fiscal year 2020 to 209.45% in fiscal year 2021. So the next steps, I don't know if anybody has any questions so far. I feel like I'm like cruising right through this. Next steps are going to be, we're going to bring it to the board meeting on July 15th and hopefully adopt the ordinance establishing this new overhead rate for fiscal year 2021. So that's all I have for the overhead rate. Any questions?
Wes, would you go back to the previous slide?
This one?
Yeah, thank you. Wasn't up there long enough for me to look at it.
Okay. So the rates overall are staying pretty consistent over the years.
Yep.
Well, you'll notice. Sorry, did you have a question?
Not a question, just a comment. I mean, we've, Hal and I have been through these now for many, many years since we kind of started doing the finance committee format, and so I'm pretty familiar with it, and I know this is one of those categories where when it goes down, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It helps the folks who might be working projects with the district, but it also makes it a little bit less a little bit less of the project that the customers don't have to pay for, right? And so, but I still like it. I like the fact that it's reflective. This little dip that we see from 217 to 209 is reflective, I think, to just a lot of our efficiencies that we put in place over the last year and or so. And so I think it's good, and I don't have any concerns.
Yeah, you said that perfectly. So through efficiencies, we've actually been able to lower our indirect costs, which in effect is reducing the overhead rate.
Wes, I have a question for you. What year was it that you started doing this?
That I started calculating overhead rate.
Yeah.
So do you mean as finance manager or just in general?
As far as the numbers I'm looking at right now, which ones are yours?
Actually, so I probably take credit for all of them, but officially 2018 forward.
So when they've been going down ever since you took over? Apparently.
I've worked on the budget since I've been at the district, and so I've been involved the whole time. But
Yeah.
I mean, but my official date was March 2018, so I'll go with that.
Right. Okay. And I'm going with, since you took over, the rates are going down.
I appreciate that. I'll take credit.
We appreciate that. Yeah.
So I think that's all we had. And like Wes said, we'll be coming back on the
Thank you.
2 weeks from Wednesday to get the approval for it.
Thank you very much.
Next.
Thank you, guys. Are we adjourned?
Let me check real quick, make sure nobody joined as an attendee. No, there's still nobody from the public that joined us, so there's no public comments.
Well, great job. Great job. Can't wait to talk about the next meeting.
All righty.
All right.
Hey, guys, have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.